I'm Allison with Daxco. I'm one of your MCs for today, and we are going to get started with our keynote panel. I am going to introduce our speakers. Just to give you kind of a logistic for the panel, we have 6 speakers joining us from organizations all over the country, and I'm going to go through their bios in just a second. But what I'll do is when we will Ron is going to be our CEO is going to be moderating the panel, and he will pose a question. So what we'll do is we'll have the question kind of posed to the group, and then we can kind of go through one by one and get responses from the group. We have probably about 5 minutes for each response to our panelists. So just keep that in mind kind of when you're going through your response. So he'll go through, we have two main questions for each of the panelists, and then a specific question kind of for each of them based on the work that they're doing at their organization. So we have a round of 3 questions. So you'll get to hear from just a great variety of voices at organizations throughout the country. So joining us from the YMCA of Greater Houston, we have John Cardone. He is the Executive Vice President of Brand Experience. He loves strategic planning and a vision to propel social growth. He is an experienced leader committed to fostering and developing teams to help impact millions of lives, and his extensive knowledge in both the for-profit and the nonprofit sectors has aided fundraising and capital development efforts. He's a dedicated husband and father who couldn't be prouder of their collective accomplishments. He enjoys the outdoors as an active cyclist and rower and is proud to be Pittsburgh born and raised. His goal is to continue contributing to the overall well-being and positive environment of the YMCA of Greater Houston to ultimately create lasting resources and benefits for the community for years to come. So thank you, John, for joining us. We also, from the YMCA of Greater Houston, have the CEO, Steve Ives. Over the past 30 plus years, his passion has been to help communities grow and thrive through programs and services at the YMCA. Steve remains committed to the Y's mission of strengthening the foundations of community for youth development, healthy living, and social responsibility. He's served in multiple executive roles during his tenure with the Y, and he currently has the pleasure of working alongside a strong board and many cause-driven leaders that serve more than 177,000 families across their many locations in the Greater Houston area. He's a proud father, husband, and community leader who enjoys outdoor activities, long-distance running, biking, and live music. And I've actually connected with Steve over a shared love of the Grateful Dead, so I have to throw that in there. We also, from the YMCA of Greater Cincinnati, have the president and CEO, Jorge Perez. He has led nonprofit organization. He's one of the first Latino Americans to lead the YMCA of Greater Cincinnati in its 164-year history of offering programs and services. He's a proven CEO, leader, manager, and director of multi-level complex organizations. He's an accomplished strategic thinker, program innovator, and evaluator, and he's committed to learning and continuous improvement. So thank you, Jorge, for joining us. We have Jim Needles, who's the Vice President of Business Information Systems at the YMCA of Greater Pittsburgh. And Jim, we are so excited to hear all about your spin classes that you put on at the YMCA of Greater Pittsburgh. We can't wait to hear more about that. We also have Jerry from the Ymca of Memphis in the Mid-South. He has close to 40 years experience within the Y movement. In 2017, he was named the new president and CEO for Ymca of Memphis in the Mid-South. He began his YMCA journey as a youth basketball and soccer player nearly 50 years ago in Jacksonville, Florida. Prior to joining the YMCA of Memphis in the Mid-South, he held executive roles with the YMCA of Catawba Valley in Hickory, North Carolina, and the YMCA of Florida's First Coast in Jacksonville, Florida. He and his wife, Erin, have 3 lovely girls. And we also, from the YMCA of Memphis in the Mid-South, have Brian McLaughlin. He is the Chief Operating Officer. He has grown up in the Y and gone from a young camper to a lifelong career in the Y. He's been involved with the Y movement for over 17 years and shares the same passion for strengthening communities. His career began at the Peninsula Metropolitan YMCA in Newport News, Virginia, where he held several positions. The majority of his time in Virginia was spent around youth development, and then he moved to the YMCA of Greater Seattle, where he served as Associate Executive Director. From there, he moved to Memphis and to lead the Cordova Family YMCA as branch executive, and he has since been promoted to Senior Vice President of Operations and now is Chief Operating Officer. So Brian, we are so excited you're joining us. So that is our great panel that we have for today. And I mentioned a couple logistics. We will have questions that we are posing to all of our panelists. And so you'll get to hear great diverse perspectives from all of them. And then we have kind of a question to hone in on their specific experience. So Ron, we are going to turn it over to you now to kick us off on this panel. Just as another note, you can see we are also in a meeting format. So if you have, you are great to have your video on so we can see your face. But if you're not speaking, just a reminder to have everyone in the audience, make sure you're muted so we don't hear any background noise. I know there may be people in your, other people in your office or wherever you're set up today that are in the background. I know my husband sometimes walks through and I can hear him on calls. So just make sure if your dog's sitting right next to you, make sure that you are muted so we don't have much background noise going on today. So we will get kicked off in just a second. Ron, if you are ready to kick us off with the first question on our panel and kind of give get us rolling.
I am. Thank you, Allison. And I can't make any promises because my dog keeps coming in. She's been the happiest in this whole COVID thing, getting lots of attention from dad. And she's 14, so she just doesn't care anymore what dad's doing. Anyway, quick question right out of the gate. I'd like to ask the panelists, what's one word that describes your vision given what we've gone through with COVID? So if you think about it, from March, we've had to kind of think and rethink our plan, and we've had to adjust, we've had to adapt, we've had to be agile. And now we can see some light at the end of the tunnel. Hopefully with the vaccine coming around, we can build back our businesses, build back how we transform the communities. So I'd like to ask you one word and then take a couple of minutes to explain why you gravitate to that word. So let's kick things off with Jerry Martin from Memphis.
Yeah, good morning, Ron. Y'all hear me okay?
Hear you perfectly.
Right. Well, good morning. Hey, let me first mention that Brian McLaughlin sends his regrets. He's sick this morning, and he's the brains of the operation here in Memphis, so I'll do the best I can, but he feels very badly about not being able to be with us this morning. But I am honored to be here and a part of this, and I guess I took this in the direction of maybe a little differently than some. The word that we've talked a lot about in the last 9 months in Memphis is grateful. And certainly there's been a lot of loss, and certainly none of us are grateful for a pandemic, grateful for the loss of jobs, loss of life, and certainly don't want to lessen that in any way. But let me just say in Memphis that we're grateful that we've been able to, at this point in time, about 9 months into this, hire most of the staff back. We had a staff reduction, I think, like everywhere in the country, from one week, about 1,500 staff, to the next week, 94% reduction in less than 100. And we're to the point where we've hired most everyone back to this point. So we're grateful for that. We're grateful that we've been able to serve our community in a different way. And as the morning goes along, I'll mention some of the impacts that we've been really fortunate to have in our community. And in food insecurity and providing essential childcare. So the Y in Memphis has been here, I heard Cincinnati 164 years. We started the year before in 1855, so 165 years in the Memphis community. And so we're grateful to be able to continue to serve. And we're grateful to have been recognized by both our city and county mayor, the governor of the state of Tennessee, and many folks, not for the accolades, but just the fact that we've been recognized as having really been an asset to this community during the pandemic, with feeding kids and providing essential childcare to the parents who many are frontline medical workers being able to work. We're grateful to have to be recognized and to be a part of the solution for this pandemic. So while we didn't, none of us chose to go through this, we're grateful that we continue to serve, continue to work, continue to have jobs, and again, is in our case, to be able to bring a lot of those folks back. So, Ron, that's kind of our story from Memphis.
Well, thank you. And I think gratitude is a big part of the attitude, Jerry. So thank you for sharing that. Let me jump over Steve Ives from down in Houston. What's a word that describes your vision and why?
So Ron, I put some thought into this, and I think I have, in all honesty, have to say the word is irreverent. And, on March 16th, the day that will go down in infamy in our organization, where we closed all of our doors, very shortly after that, I declared to our team that we have no more branches. We have one, it's called our website. And we're going to decide what we're going to do from here. We're not going to be anchored to what was. I literally wept in my car one day after a call with some colleagues, really letting go of the why that I once knew and the organization and the structure in which I once operated, as a coping mechanism, but also as a way to really formulate us taking advantage of, making sure we take advantage of this downtime, this disruption, to become a very different organization coming out of this. So we have not been tied to, anchored to the way things were with a belief that we're going to get back to it. We've been really focused on letting go of how things were and making sure that we are a very, very different organization with a different model around membership we'll talk about later, as well as a different way of engaging with our community, and not just programs, but just who we are and how we are and let's translate it into the staff structure that we've built. Very different, totally different set of players in many instances, and a set of players ready for the future of what the why will be. So we have been a bit irreverent, and that has been a theme for me, if you will. Thank you.
I love it. That's a great word. Having worked with you for a while, it's also very, very fitting. Thanks, Steve. Let's Jim Needles up in the undefeated Pittsburgh Steelers land.
Good morning, Ron.
My dad's a huge Steelers fan, so it makes his day. And but I'm sure everybody there in that community is pretty excited about the black and gold.
We always are, absolutely. I want to thank you and your team for what you're doing here. It's a great way for us to get together.
And Jim, I have to apologize. I had your bio pulled up, but I was trying to go through too many screens. So I'm going to go through it right now. Just to
you don't need to do that, Allison. Thank you.
I want to. Okay, so Jim Needles, joining us from the Ymca of Pittsburgh today, is a degreed software engineer from the University of Pittsburgh with a minor in psychology. He loves relating to users and is able to relate complex technical concepts to non-technical people, which I am one. So thank you for that. We appreciate that. After working for 2 multinational corporations and then several startups, Jim has been the VP of Business Information Systems for the Y of Greater Pittsburgh. He's been key to the technological transformation of the Y for 14 years. Prior to his arrival, information technology was not a strategic enabler as it is today. Beyond the world of technology, he's been married for 33 years, has 4 amazing kids, 2 grandchildren, leads spin classes, as we mentioned, boot camp classes 6 times a week, and has been a volunteer for the Y for the past 15 years. He's run 9 marathons and is now pursuing an Ironman. So we will now officially turn it over to you, Jim, and my apologies for that.
And so thanks to Daxco, Allison, and everybody putting together. It's great to see you surrounded, and the team I've been working with Daxco for a lot of years now. And but the word for me is service. I love gratitude. That hits the mark. But what we've done since March 16th is change the way we serve, change the way our staff addresses our members, how our members come to us, and how we all serve. And it's going to change. We're always going to be changed from this point forward. What we used to know as our branches, as Mr. Martin said, the why that we knew, or as Mr. Ives said, the why that we knew back in March is not going to ever be the same. We're always going to have something new here. And thanks to Daxco, to Google, to the advent and the utilization of technology, we're able to serve in ways that we couldn't even imagine before. And it's so great to hear our members reach out to us and thank us for helping them through COVID-19. The goal for all the people is they're affectionately known as Needles Nation. I thank John Cardone, because thanks to John, I became a spin instructor. Thank you. It's amazing to have our members reach out and say thank you. The deal with Needles Nation was that we wanted everybody to come through COVID stronger. That COVID 25, COVID 30, whatever those numbers were, we wanted to come through stronger and faster, and it's the way we serve. And so, Ron, thanks for the opportunity.
Absolutely, Jim. Thank you. So service, that's a great word. That is a great word. Back over to my old neighbor, Jorge Perez out of Cincinnati. Wanted to reach out to you, Jorge. What's a word that's guiding the vision of the YMCA in Greater Cincinnati, and what's the background of that word?
Well, first of all, again, like everybody, thank you so much for the gathering. It is a welcome distraction from everything COVID to think about some other things, particularly how this organization is going to serve its community. So the word, and no surprise for those of you that know me, that popped up almost immediately, is transformation. I believe the YMCA has been in at the crossroads of the tension between transactional and transformational. And when COVID hit, it just drove us deeper into that space. That's what you're hearing from the other speakers when they talk about focusing on mission, focusing on saying goodbye to what was. But what we don't say goodbye to is our commitment to transform the lives of people and to measure that and double down on that. And so we doubled up on the idea that we are here to transform or strengthen the spirit, minds, and bodies, and the tools that we were so familiar with were no longer going to work. And so we needed to try some new things. We were experiencing a movement shaping event. We've experienced these things before in our movement, and our predecessors may have said goodbye to some old ways of doing things, but they never said goodbye to the idea of transforming our communities and transforming the people we serve. And so transformation is my word.
Jorge, thank you for transformation and what you do to transform the lives of people in the greater Cincinnati area. Let me spin it over to another Steelers fan. And this, we have a lot in common, John. I grew up just outside of Detroit, and the Detroit Lions and the Pittsburgh Steelers get confused often by their relative success. You almost can't tell them apart sometimes. Anyway, John Cardone from Houston, YMCA. What's one word that's informing your vision and why?
Yeah, so I'll echo everyone else's sentiments. It's great to feel somewhat like a little bit of normalcy, getting back with all of our colleagues across the movement. So just excited for a different conversation. For me, it's responsibility, and my takeaway on that is about lifting our brand. Throughout our history, as Jorge and others have talked about, the Y has stepped up like no other organization, and we've been able to demonstrate that, particularly in Houston, for over 130 years. And being new to Houston, what this Y specifically is done through, as I tell Steve, flood, famine, locust, and every common disaster out there, this Y is strong, and it has stepped up in many ways. So we looked at it as a responsibility to say, how could we continue on that trajectory during this time and have a greater impact? And so what we decided to do is have a very aggressive approach in our marketing strategy. And so we, as Steve talked about, we repositioned ourselves. We allocated significant resources to really get the word out there about who we are as an organization. And it was really about making us relevant in the community. So not only the community, but private public partners, our members, our volunteers saw us as the catalyst to really continue that change in our community. And, again, the thought behind what a committed team that we have. And so the way that we've deployed our team to have that impact, elevate our story, it was a pretty powerful outcome for us. So I think that's the thing, Ron, that sticks out the most for me, is just the continuation of our responsibility. But as we saw through this pandemic, our community needed us in a very, very different way across broad communities, not just singular communities. So I was just excited to be part of the journey.
I'm glad you are, John. Thank you very much for responsibility. And you're right. We all have that responsibility. I, like many others, have scribbled down the key words. So we've got grateful from Jerry, irreverent, service from Jim, transformation and responsibility. So we'll try to weave that into one sentence, and that can maybe be our theme of Accelerate conference. As we just get to this another question, next level question, I'd like to go back to our panelists and say, what's one way that you're accelerating your future that you'd like to share with the movement? That you feel is something that, hey, look, this is something that we're doing given COVID impact in the community. Here's one thing we're doing to accelerate in this environment that we could share as a lesson learned. So, Jerry, kick things off for us.
Yeah, Ron, thanks. And I think for us, and I'm sure for everybody, knowing where the why is needed. And John mentioned that, Steve mentioned that, others. Just that maybe the health and wellness piece of what we're doing, we're still obviously needed there, but people's apprehensions, that we're all hoping that will come back. And I think for us, looking forward to 2021, of just the idea of knowing where the why is needed. And as in our case, really embracing two things that have been most needed in our perception this year in Memphis and the Mid-South. Have been childcare and food insecurity. And so our commitment in 2021, while we of course are going to continue hopefully to grow membership, not at least probably not back to where it has been, of course, but certainly to grow it back, is our commitment to those two areas in food and childcare. With CARES money this year, we were able to, in our association offices, to build an industrial kitchen that come the first of the year, will be able to produce 25,000 meals a day. And we've been using outside vendors. This is just an opportunity for us to kind of vertically integrate and produce meals. And when I say produce meals, immediately people go, oh my gosh, you're talking about mission creep, getting out of what we do well as an organization. Maybe the word is better is assembling meals. We're going to be assembling meals and then serving those meals at about 100 different locations in Memphis and the Mid-South come the first of the year. And so we see this as a major part of our mission going forward in conjunction with a lot of partners, some of whom we've worked with, some of whom we've never worked with in this capacity. Certainly the Memphis Food Bank and others that we see as being key in this work. We've had a lot of success in childcare. We have now, as part of our service, all of the after-school childcare for Shelby County Schools, which is the municipal school district in Memphis. And we have then 10 additional districts outside of Memphis in Tennessee, Mississippi, and Arkansas. And so when school does get completely back, which I was hoping to learn, just kidding, from that, when that's going to happen. I know that's still a question all of us like to answer, when kids will be back in school completely. Because we have a lot of different versions of that in our areas, I'm sure y'all do. But we'll have about 170 after-school sites, about 15,000 kids a day. And we continue to pick up districts and have some good momentum there. And then we'll be, as mentioned, we'll be doing 25,000 meals a day. We look to be doing about 100,000 meals a week. And all told, then that sets us up as a very different organization in 2021 from even 2020 and certainly from 2019, that our total revenue from membership will be what was traditionally 55 to 60%, which I think is the case in a lot of ways, will be 20 to 25%. One, obviously, because of the shortfall in membership, but just the growth in those other areas. And so we don't find ourselves as dependent as we've been on membership. Certainly, there is some volatility in childcare anytime you're working in the schools, but we see that as a good path forward after this, and then hopefully membership will grow back in time. So that's where we're headed in Memphis.
Great, Jerry. And I'm going to circle back with you on the membership piece here in a couple of minutes. So thank you. That's very interesting. Um, as far as extending your mission relative to food assembly. And do you think that you will continue that? Do you think that's a long-term aspect or part of the fabric of your YMCA?
Yeah, it is, Ron. We again in a community in Memphis that is in the top 5 in terms of food insecurity in the nation. We see that as a real need, and we're seen as a major provider in that work. And one of the reasons is that no organization is able to get, during this pandemic, as we took over food service for Shelby County schools, and that's part of my answer to question number 3, so I don't want to get ahead of myself. They saw us as an asset because we were able to go into some communities that they had basically closed food sites, and with the help of the city and the county, we're able to go in and open additional sites and feed additional kids with some flexibility with food waivers. We're able to push meals out in a way that hasn't been done. So I think not to certainly talk about government bureaucracy, but as you know, I think I'm sure whether it's called being nimble or whatever, we don't quite have as many as much red tape as some of the government groups, and so we're able to move into communities and do things differently, do things across county lines, across state lines, and again, we're unique to a lot of Ys that, as I mentioned, we're in certainly headquartered in Tennessee, but we also have major impact in Mississippi and Arkansas. So.
Yeah, I think your geography reminds me a lot of like Jorge up in Cincinnati. It's right there. You know, you can throw a rock into Kentucky, and same thing with Memphis. Let's go down to Houston, Steve. What's something that you guys have done, a pivot to accelerate your future that you'd like to share with the movement?
I'm not sure it's so much a pivot as an acceleration of a commitment. So for the last 27 years, I've served as a CEO of now 4 different Ys, and in each instance, chasing after the coveted 10 to 15% of your revenue coming from philanthropic sources, never quite achieving it. When I came to Houston, one of the challenges I gave to the board, as I said, someone's got to prove that 30% is possible. Not only do we deserve that kind of public and private support, but we can attract it, and it will transform how we show up in community when we're able to do the right thing and attract the dollars. And believe it or not, this experience through COVID has accelerated that. We will achieve 30% or more of our revenue. Part of it is because our other revenue has dropped, but we've also will have twice as much philanthropic public and private support this year than we did last year. It is just the beginning of, and it's because we're doing the right things, as others have talked about, the food distribution and the stand-up child care for emergency providers, all the stuff, all the ways in which we showed up and also told the story well. So I was committed to not backing off on philanthropy or marketing through all of this, that was really going to be the core of how we would grow through all of this, and we continue around that, and it's borne us some wonderful fruit and momentum and some wind beneath our wings for the year or 2 ahead of us as we continue to invest in those aspects of our work. I think that traditionally, historically, across the country, our YMCAs have underinvested in philanthropy in particular. We wonder why colleges and universities raise so much money, more money than us. Is because they've got about 20 or 30 more people in their development office than any of us do, and a sophisticated process that they're spending money on and investing in. And similarly around marketing, I heard a colleague say, "Oh, everybody cut their marketing budget during COVID." I kept my mouth shut. We actually grew our marketing budget and our marketing spend during COVID, and it's certainly paying off. So we've accelerated those 2 things, and in particular, accelerated our desire to have 30% or more of our revenue come from philanthropic sources.
Well, that's terrific. Thank you. 30% is an audacious goal. but you're right. You know, if you're doing the right things, and transforming your community, that's the ask. And that's great that the people in Houston, because I know, I've spent a lot of time in Houston working. I know with oil prices being depressed, it's a really, really tough time. It really crushes the Houston economy. So the fact that you're able to achieve that in that environment really bodes well for the future.
You're correct. Like it was a double whammy here when oil and gas prices go down, it's as bad as COVID. We had both happen, and like negative value on a barrel of oil for a little while. So in the midst of that, people who have enormous wealth still have enormous wealth, just not quite as enormous as it once was. And I think as why folks, we've always been a little shy and timid, or not having the confidence to put ourselves forward with people who have that kind of capacity. And we're learning that our volunteers who have those connections, as well as our doing the right thing, telling the story well, is opening up some really impactful doors for us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's excellent. Great. Jim, what's something that you're doing there in Pittsburgh that you'd like to share with
I think it's
them?
really, and it's part of the transformation is listening and then reacting better than I think we ever did before. What we did, 72 hours after we locked the doors when we launched a virtual branch and virtual wellness was a bit of an experiment, and it took off, and it took off well. And we listened to the groups, we listened to the active aging group, and they loved the classes. They loved the ability to get back together and be with the group they're used to. But I'd drop into the class, and one of the ladies in the class said, "Jim, this is great. This is fabulous. I get to get my blood flowing, I get to move a little bit, but we missed the interaction. We missed the ability to chat with our friends, to be with the people, and we're secluded now in our homes. So we created, virtual cafes so we listened and we reacted. As it came to summer camp, we had to create virtual summer camps. And how do we do that? And how do we do virtual story time so that people could connect? We're in the midst of another one right now in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, because now we're as we work out, even with some very aggressive classes, we have to wear masks. And try to take a class like mine, wearing a mask is a little tricky thing. And we listened, and that's where effectively every class we offer within a branch, there's a virtual component at the same time. So if we have members who just aren't comfortable coming in, fine, stay at home. I've had during a spin class, people on an elliptical or people on a treadmill, just so they can get their blood flowing and hanging out. That listening and then reacting is something I think is an agileness that we're all going to experience. We're all going to have to get used to, and it's just going to continue with time. Ryan, I think you're muted.
I am on mute. I think we've changed, from the cell phones of, can you hear me now, to I think you're on mute. It's become part of our culture.
It sure has.
When you were enabling the virtual aspect of what you're doing, is that something you had before COVID, or something you had to react and pivot? And if so, what are you doing to facilitate that virtual engagement?
There's the enabling technology. Back probably 13 years ago, we partnered with Google. And we, at that time, I went right out to the philanthropy wing of Google and joined their education platform. So we're just like a school. And my thought was, if the large universities out there can be sitting on a Google platform, it probably makes sense for the Y. And they were very graciously gave me everything they had. And we had these Google Meet spaces out there, which were neat. We dabbled with them on New Year's Day. I do a New Year's Day ride. I know it's crazy. And many of our branches would like me to show up. Well, I can only get to so many branches in a day. So we started to experiment on January 1st of 2020 of how do we do some of this virtually? How do people just join us? And there is weather that we get here in Pittsburgh sometimes. And how do we also deal with that? So we were already positioned pretty well. We had the concepts down. It was then fine tuning, to your point. I hate that word, but yeah, pivot. We pivoted to then create this offering out to our membership.
Interesting. Wow, that was fortuitous that you were kind of ahead of the curve there. Very cool.
By having some of the building blocks, we just had to put the puzzle pieces together, and then how we then took that forward. So when we opened the doors on March 17th to this virtual branch, that was open for all. And that worked out well until we got to a point where we got through this and we needed to make this a member experience. And that's thanks to Group X Pro and thanks to Daxco, we were then able to take that to then hook up the Google pieces on the other side of it to create a member experience. So they still use their membership card to come in. We created the experience as a member, just as you come to one of our branches. We do the same thing on the virtual side as well.
Yep. And how has that been received?
It's been received extremely well. We're dealing with such a broad populace of the population is very broad, and we're serving so many different people. And that's one of the tests for me, whether you're coming across on a laptop, whether you're on a tablet, whether even have people who joining me on a phone and taking classes that way. And as well as one of the neat things that happened is people are connecting us from around the world to join us in our classes now. And it's something that we didn't have on the staff side. Now our instructors from the different branches now have communities that are outside their branches, where before it was just a silo of a branch. Now we're spanning across our entire footprint, which is just another great event from this.
Yeah, I think one of the things too, as we reflect back on this time is, Jerry brought up gratitude. We're really lucky, and I know I'm kind of like, people look at me strange all the time because I tend to see the glasses always half full, if then and more. But we are so lucky that there was this technological footprint in place when COVID hit.
Right.
If it would have hit even 3 years ago, 4 years ago, the impact on our communities, our kids, and I know it's really tough on teachers. I've got 2 kids in school. And it is tough teaching kids with Zoom, but it's a lot tougher without anything. I don't know what we would have done. So really, really clever. Thank you. Jorge, what in Cincinnati, what is something that you're doing that you'd like to share with the movement that you think can help them guide their vision and impact and transform their community?
Well, like so many, the YMCA in Cincinnati quickly adjusted to the changing environment. I mentioned the words "a movement shifting event" earlier, and that's what COVID was. But let's make no mistake about this: the movement was already in the midst of shift. We were in a slow shift. We were already seeing the erosion in our membership structures, in our designs. And for whatever reason, maybe we focused too long for too many years on the transactional part of our work and did not ask enough, are we transforming the lives of people? And I want to unpack that a little bit and then talk about some general thoughts that are guiding our decisions. When I talk about how we transform people in our focus there, it's a fundamental question about how we measure our impact in the lives of people. If a YMCA or any endeavor, I know we have some folks from the JCC here on this call. If a YMCA or a human serving organization is not measuring its impact on humans, and all it's doing is measuring retention rates and how many people come in and how many more joined and how many people, how much dollars, then we're no longer in the human development space. We're simply a provider, just like everybody else. And so one of the questions is how are we measuring that? If we say we strengthen spirit, minds, and bodies, are we actually measuring that? And we began to ask that question long before COVID here in Cincinnati. All that COVID did is accelerate the process. So there are 4 words that are kind of guiding our future casting as we move forward. I've been sharing those 4 words on social media over the last several weeks. And they are virtual, virtuous, viral, and valiant. A virtual we've already talked about, which is we've got to get out of our buildings. We need to get out in the platforms where people interact, and we need to be able to do these kinds of things. We're talking about online classes or videos that describe who we are and what we do. On the virtuous front, that's about being transformational. This is about focusing on the very core of what people need, whether it's meals or virtual tutoring or anything along those lines. We have to get crystal clear about how we're meeting or advancing the mission of the organization. The viral means we have to get big. We have for too long settled with small numbers. We get excited when we have 30,000, 40,000, 50,000 members in a community that has millions. And how can we be about strengthening the foundations of communities at the 1,000 level when we have millions of people that we're serving? And I think we have to get viral. We have to figure out a way. And as an example of that is we launched this challenge in Cincinnati. We gave it free to the community. It's a 6-week challenge. There are several people on this call that participated in that because we then relaunched it across the movement. We have 30,000 people across the movement that were engaged that way. And I'm not satisfied because we are working with 200 million people in this country, 300 million. We need to get to the tune of 25 million people doing these challenges and getting stronger and better through the YMCA. So we have to get viral about what we do. And then valiant, and this goes to Steve Ives' comment earlier when he talked about being irreverent about our past. We have to be courageous about the things we have to say. We have to say to people that have been with this YMCA for 25 and 30 years, your time has come because the skills and talents we need for the future are different. The mechanics that used to work in the combustion engine did not go to work at Tesla. Those mechanics were obsolete, and we are entering a different world because the world has shifted too much. This is why I think one of the challenges with education right now. They keep trying to take teachers that know how to teach in person and believe that these teachers can teach virtually, and it's just a very different idea. And if we don't make those transformations, we ourselves are going to become obsolete very quickly. So virtual, virtuous, viral, and valiant, guiding our decisions, whether we're talking about how we serve kids, how we serve seniors, or how we define membership in the next 150, 75 years.
Jorge, let me follow up. Really interesting perspective on things, and those 4 words, really come at this from lots of different angles. What's 1 or 2 things that you made as far as a decision or an impact on your vision or what you're doing right now that was different or more impactful because you use these 4 words to govern it, versus if you were in the old, a year or 2 or 5 years ago, you would have done X, but because you're thinking about the world this way, you're doing Y. What's a couple of examples of that?
Let's talk about how and when we closed our facilities. We didn't wait until the governor told us you have to close. We closed before we were closed. And we ran in the direction of meeting a particular need because there was a need in the community and we needed those buildings for something else. We needed them for pandemic childcare, and we went in a different direction. We might be one of the very few YMCAs hosting COVID testing on our properties. We have tested thousands of people in our facilities 2 times a week at 3 to 4 locations. Earlier today, I was on a call with the library to try to figure out how we serve the community together. And my question isn't how can you help us? My question is how do we help you? How do we help you get books in the hands of people in our community, and how do we use our assets to do it? That was a viral impact. The strong challenge was not something we sold; it's something we gave. And when we do reset in January, that's what we're calling the next journey. We'll do the same thing, and our goal is to reach tens of thousands of people. Our old model would have said, how do we charge for this? How do we charge for this? How do we get people on board? And, you know, somebody had to pay for it for sure. And so I had to ask the question, how are we going to pay for this stuff? But we answered that differently because our focus was trying to get viral and focused on what we did. And so I do think fundamentally this shifted quite a number of our approaches with how we serve people.
Oh, that's great. That's really, really interesting. I'll follow up with you. I'm curious how you solve that with the library. It's something I hadn't even thought about, but yeah, that's an issue. How do you get those books into people's hands safely? Very, very interesting. You'll have to.
And Ron, if I could add, you know, as another example is we started partnering with people that used to be quote unquote our competitors. So when we were trying to serve kids during the summer months and we found out the rec centers were struggling and we got money to serve them, we used those dollars to help quote unquote their kids. If we're about viral impact, then they cannot be their kids and my kids. They have to be our kids.
Oh, that's great.
So we moved a chunk of resources in their direction to try to help support their work.
That's awesome. That's really, really cool. Great example. Thank you. John, going back to Houston, what's an example of something you've done differently given the impact of COVID that you are accelerating the future at Houston that you believe would benefit the rest of the movement?
Yeah, so I'll go back to what Steve's vision was for us as a why. And so get probably a little bit more tactical than philosophical, right? Because it's going to take something to deliver on that. But again, I'll reiterate this over and over. It's really about the elevation of our brand. Everything should lead to, again, brand improvement, brand elevation. And I think we're pretty excited through COVID. You know, we started out the survey and 3% of the community knew that we did something good, right? The why stood out very differently. And then, you know, as we got into July and August, we resurveyed those members and the community again, and it was elevated to about 6%. So again, I think we're on trajectory to know that we're doing some really good work. Goal overall is going to be about 10%. But in order to accomplish that big, bold vision that Steve's laid out for us, and he shared a little bit of it, it's going to be really a big investment. And the investment, when we talk about the investment, it's done in a fiduciary responsible way, right? So, you know, something has to give in order for us to accelerate. So as we look at our organization, we're reprioritizing all of our efforts. And as Steve talked about, it's around membership, it's around philanthropy, and it's around childcare. But that investment is really a solid infrastructure. We never get to the things that we need to do. We always leapfrog, but we never have the infrastructure in place to deliver on that long-term goal. So for us, this is a long-term strategy. So that investment, you know, in that infrastructure, as Steve talked about, is really around our website. Our website is our front door. So you will see, you know, as we move into January and closer on, you will see an entire new website for us. Right now, it's very surface oriented, but investment into our website, investment into our CRM in a new and a different way, taking a very, very data-driven approach. We measure and analyze everything, and we're learning and learning and learning, and we're refining and we're refining and refining. You got Jim touched about this, the development of our virtual model. And that investment on the virtual model is going to sit on our platform, but it's not necessarily going to be fitness related. Our community, being very diverse, has very diverse needs. And so, again, big commitment to our senior population. We've got over 20,000 seniors engaging with us on our virtual platform. But again, fitness related is the small element of it. There's education, there's all those other things. And so, you know, we will continue to make those investments. Those investments are going to lead to a personalized model. And, you know, Ron and Joe and the team know about this, is that our end goal is going to be the Amazon approach. We're not benchmarking a traditional way to transact with people. In order for us to transform our relationships, as Jorge said, it's got to be very personalized. So something means different to every one of us on our screen, on this screen. So again, that investment is going to lead us to developing a personalized model in our communication, in our pricing. The traditional membership, we agree, is out the door. And so people want to transact with us in a very different and personalized way. We experience it every day on our phones or the big brands that we engage with. Our programs, we may not be running all the programs that we need to, that we've done in the past. So how do we, again, community by community, provide the programs? And then everything is going to be about our cause. So in all of our communication, cause is going to be front and center. It's not about taking a swim lesson, it's about changing a life. So really good infrastructure in place to support all of that. We don't feel like the community that we're serving is enough. So Steve talks about the tipping point, but we have a community of 8.2 million people. Our goal over the next 3 to 5 years is really to tap into that as much as possible. So again, transformational work versus transactional is kind of the key. And I think the thing I'd lead everyone with is not afraid to fail and learn. You know, we don't have this all figured out. We have a very, very entrepreneurial spirit, and we are learning something very different. We are successful in many ways, but we're failing in many ways. But again, this investment will allow us to continue to do that. So again, excited about our direction, and also really excited to learn from everybody else on this call with some of these key points.
Thanks, John.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Really, really exciting work that you're doing, and really proud to be a part of it and supporting. It's fascinating as we lock arms and look into the future. You know, it's kind of hazy and foggy, but it's also extremely exciting. So thank you.
Yeah, I mean, if you want me to give you a plug, you know, we've evaluated a different. No, yeah, there you go. I got your chat. That's okay. No, I'm teasing. But you know, as we look
at you mental telepathy.
There you go. Yeah. No, and I mean, I think it's important. I talked about partnership, right? So, you know, as we evaluated our CRM, our website, and our data analytics strategy, there are many partners out there. But again, we talked about it's a long-term play. So we're excited to be partnering with DAXCO across all of those areas. And we feel like, you know, they're the right organization to lead us to accomplish to get to this 8 million people and really truly transform our community, as well as putting our staff in the right place so they can do the things that they've always wanted to do, meet and exceed our members and our community's expectations. So you guys have been a great partner, and we're looking forward to the journey.
As are we. So thank you. I'll spin back through, starting with Jerry, and let me ask a different question. What's been the toughest thing you've had to stop doing? Given the impact of COVID and where you're going, what have you had to stop doing that's been tough? Let's start with Jerry.
Yeah, Ron, I think for us, like many wise, you know, having to top down just evaluate everything you're doing in the community. We're as many of us know, we're not good at giving up things that maybe we're not enrolling a lot of people, but it's a sacred cow, if you will. And obviously a lot of that was forced on us. We, like I think everyone, have considerably lessened our staffing of our centers. And so I think getting a balance between the appropriate amount of staff to be there for the members that are there is a tough balance, and one that, you know, we get feedback, positive and negative. The members that are coming, of course, are saying, hey, this is great. I don't have any problem getting on a treadmill. But then a lot of our staff feedback is, hey, we don't have enough folks to take care of the folks that are coming in. And so resisting continuing to invest in our in the membership piece for us anyway right now, and I say invest from a staffing standpoint of having more staff maybe than we need, has been difficult. And then just discontinuing some of our programming that again are maybe some staff favorites and all, but are just not things that we're able to do. We in the Y, of course, are do a lot of things, and sometimes and not just speaking of us, and doing a lot of things and none of them really well. And so we have, again, resisted the temptation to continue a lot of things. And again, this has been a good exercise in what's really critical to our community. What are the things that our community need versus, and I've heard from several of the speakers, very well said, listening to the community in terms of what they really need right now. And so I think for us, giving up some of those programs, maybe some of those things will come back, but we'll see as we go forward.
Thanks, Jerry. Steve, what's an example of something that you had to on purpose stop doing, either for an interim period or permanently, that was kind of a tough decision you'd share with everybody?
Probably the third-party pay arrangements that we had. So we had a number of those, all with older adults. Some other categories where there was a billing to a third party, health insurer or an intermediary. That was a challenge internally, as well as communication with our center boards and with our seniors in particular. So we canceled all of our contracts. We had about 4 or 5 different ones with third party payers. So there was some legal wrangling we had to do. And we had to, be patient. We had to continue to honor free access for a while without getting any reimbursement. I would say that was a challenge. Now, it was also absolutely an opportunity, given this disruption, to do something that might have taken us a while to get to. We might have had more gnashing of teeth and wringing of hands and trying to figure out how do we get from here to there. But it certainly it was a pretty heavy lift to navigate through all of the contracts that we had, and to make sure we notified properly, and also communicating with the over 65 population that we have as part of our YMCA.
Mm-hmm. And if I can ask a follow-on question,
Sure.
Was this something that you were looking at or evaluating before COVID? And if yes or no, but how did you, when you put that on the scales, right? I as you know, I serve at a Y, and any kind of revenue that we think of not doing, it's goes to the board almost. It's a big deal. So how did you kind of do those scales to make that's a very courageous, tough decision?
Well, so in the first part of the question, certainly it's something that I and many others who are in these contracts have been thinking about, either renegotiating them, getting them better, finding a new way forward. Some states and some Ys have, prior to COVID, had peeled off the Band-Aid, if you will. So it certainly wasn't like this new idea that arose on March 16th. But the thing that really there was 2 major components to it for me. One was we're in an economic model that requires people to swipe their card in our building in order for us to get paid for their membership. And that's just not going to happen for a while. I knew that people weren't going to be coming in. And then I asked my question, ethically, morally, is it right for me and for us to be involved in a business transaction that that encourages us economically to encourage people over 65 to go out in public and be in our buildings? And for me, that was the deal breaker. I'm like, absolutely not. And I don't think I should be involved in any kind of arrangement like that, at least for the next year or 2. So, agree or not, right or wrong, those were the 2 big ones for me. And then as I looked around, all of our revenue is getting disrupted. We lost $50 million of membership and program revenue in the last 6 months. The 2 or 3 that were part of Silver Sneakers is just a piece of the puzzle. It's not the deal breaker. And so I think that, it's like, well, it's going bad. Let's go. Let's peel off the Band-Aid. Let's restart in a way. And I think those 2 things, the ethical, moral piece of it, as well as just the logic of the business. And I think we also tried. We asked the question, can we get paid for virtual? Because we were putting money into time and effort. We had hundreds of videos that were up. We had at times thousands at a time of our seniors being part of, and they were all part of these third-party paid programs. And we were not given a definitive answer about whether we could get paid or not. again, it was like, we don't have partners who are going to go out on a limb and take some risk with us. And the ethical, moral, is this part of something we want to be part of in the future, and the business opportunity to make the move and transition from it.
Very interesting. Thank you, Steve. Going to our marathon man, Jim, what's something you had to stop doing in Pittsburgh? It was a tough decision that you would share with the rest of the movement.
Or one of the toughest I think we had to go through. We ended up having to close a branch. We ended up selling a camp, doing things like that. But when we were getting into the summer, our family camp, can we have family camp? Can we have our traditional resident camp for the kids? And for us to work through so many different options and to come up that the traditional family camp that we would have 10 weeks of 100% filled camp, we couldn't do it. And the leadership did a great job of working through the issues, working through the challenges to find out that we could have mini camps where families could come and stay isolated. How did that model change at family camp so that there would not, the big dining hall that we can't be serving food there, but there would be takeout food for the campers. And to say that, to give up that sacred cow of family camp at Deer Valley, which is just an amazing thing. And the passion that all those campers have. If you're a week 5 camper, that's a family. And how do you give that up? And to I hate the word, we pivoted so that we could adjust to that. And then just recently,
Why do you hate that word, Jim?
After this, I never want to hear pivot again. I don't want to hear it again. So we just had seminars. We had Zoom meetings with each of the weeks of the campers, just so that we could create. And we just did that 2 weeks ago, just to give thanks, the gratitude for what Deer Valley family campers had, and to watch the reactions of everybody on these little screens. To share about what they've been doing with their families and how eager we are to get through this so we can come bring that back together again. But that pivot was a very challenging and hard pivot to take.
Tell me a little bit more. So trying to ask my question without saying pivot.
That's okay. You can let it loose.
with those campers in those weeks. So my daughters have done a similar type thing, and you're right. It does become this kind of family away from home.
Absolutely.
And it's very interesting. So you did a virtual kind of camp just to let them each week to connect with each other.
So what we did just prior to Thanksgiving is a chance to say thank you from us and give everybody an update of thank you for dealing and helping us through the summer that we had, and what do we think the next summer is going to look like, and just so everybody can relate. I think with the work that John's doing down in Houston, it's really about relationships. That's what we are. Whether it's the relationships with the active older adults, whether it's the relationships with the marathon people who I get to have the opportunity to train. It's all about relationships, the relationships with the kiddos that we sponsor in our pod program. So the parents can be at work while the kids can be at school with us. It's how do we, and so we created each session for each of the weeks. So the families of week 1 to come together to have an update of what's going on, kind of prepare what next year is going to look like potentially, as the best we can look in that crystal ball right now, and to be a family.
And just a follow-up question on some of the virtual content and workouts you're offering. Is that part of the whatever membership plan that they were on, or is there an incremental fee to be a part of that? How does that work?
Where we are right now, any of our full facility memberships gives you access to the virtual platform. We continue to have internal discussions. Again, John, thanks for your help what you're doing down there in Houston, to see if there's another model that we need to shift towards. And it all really depends on, how long will this go on? How long will our membership be willing to hang on with this unknown period that we're going to be in? It's hard. It's certainly challenging to have members. And just again, as I mentioned before, with masks coming on, this crazy following that I now have probably 10% as of last week now just want to be virtual with me, just because trying to work out with a mask on, being concerned that the guy behind me didn't keep his mask on, even though, yeah, as an instructor, that's my job to make sure everyone's keeping it safe. How do we deal with how people can be comfortable and still be part of the Y family?
Have you had any material resistance where people have said, well, look, if I'm going to just go virtual, I don't want to pay, a similar membership structure, or have people been pretty good about, just kind of going along with the program? Because that's a tough one to navigate, right? I mean,
Yes,
what are you seeing in your community?
Yeah, our membership and wellness team is being led very well. Lisa Horton, you may have heard her through the Y. She's an amazing young lady. The messaging that we're giving to our Welcome Center staffs to have those discussions. Yes, there has been some pushback that, just not comfortable coming in and this doesn't work. And we've done, I think everyone has seen our memberships drifting, people going from a hold to terminations. We're now just seeing a little bit of an uptick. We're hopeful that things are going to continue that way. But it really gets into, again, to listening, letting them know where we are and what we're offering right now, and that we're considering some other options. And if it's a termination, we have a note in DAXCO that says, okay, if it turns out to have a virtual offering, we know who we're going to reach out to now.
Okay, Denver. All right, sounds good. Thanks, Jim.
You're welcome.
Jorge, what's something that was a tough decision that you had to stop doing when COVID hit, that is something worth sharing with the movement?
I think you're hearing from so many of the leaders kind of this general message of the need to unpack old models, that was very difficult. Whether we're talking about staffing, for us, that included creating what we're calling a multi-skilled environment. The old model where one person worked the front desk and that's the only job they know to do, that's old. We need them to be able to do what James does, which is teach a class and work the front desk and maybe be a lifeguard. And we have to be able to move people around, and there was a lot of individuals that resisted that structure. I also thought that we had to shift the way we thought of our members. And that has been a complicated shift, which is, are they people we serve, or are they people we ask to join and become part of our service to the community we're trying to engage? In other words, are we going to be perpetually helping Martha with her Zumba and Pilates, or am I ever going to turn Martha into part of our movement? And so that was a substantial shift, because I believe that part of the transformation that happens in the lives of human beings is when they themselves roll up their sleeves and say, I want to help, I want to do that. So we've been shifting our messages and calling people into their hero story. How do we invite them into being part of the heroic response to the community? In other words, when we talk about the things we're doing in the community, things like feeding families, we don't say the Y's feeding families. We're saying you are helping us feed families. You are the reason we're able to do this. So that they're a sense of pride in their engagement. And I love the emails I get back from people that say, and this is why I belong to the YMCA. Because they know that it's not the Zumba and Pilates and fitness classes, but it's because, including individuals that say, I don't care if we shut down, I'm going to continue to be a member of this movement we call the YMCA. And then if I could just add this, and this is something we were doing long before COVID, but stop branding everything we do locally. This is a real challenge for our movement. I don't need to tell our members this is Cincinnati. I don't know why we do that, why we put Cincinnati YMCA or Houston YMCA or Austin YMCA or Paducah YMCA on everything we do, videos and so forth and so on. We're one movement. I think we would go a long way on the viral front if we stop doing that. It's the reason we were able to scale the Strong Challenge. We didn't put anything on Cincinnati on the materials. The videos didn't say anything. And that was easy then for me to plot that information and give it to people all over the country, and they were able to use it without any modifications. I'm aware that YMCAs around the country were using our materials, our videos in their markets, and they don't care. You know, I don't even identify myself in those videos, just simply Jorge, a Y leader. And somebody in a smaller market that can't afford a video like that, they can just use that. And if the message fits, that fits. Even when we were doing our welcome back videos, we created 3 versions of that so that YMCAs of different markets could use them and made them available. I think we can do better doing that. And that was one of the things we changed, shifting our message from me to we. We being the YMCA of the USA.
Yeah, that you know, we all have a role, and I think that's why there are people here on this call. And earlier you had mentioned, you know, our important partners from the Jewish community centers, and I interact with a number of the CEOs on a fairly regular basis, and hear about the great things they're doing to impact their communities. You know, look, this is an unprecedented situation of COVID impacting all of us, and everybody's got to row the boat, you know. And I love your insight there, Jorge, about when you get people involved and connected to what they're doing, where they're the ones. You know, that's how we transform our own hearts, is through service, and being engaged and being active. So thank you for that insight. John, I know, you know, COVID kind of pulled the rug out from some of the things that were going on down in Houston, and we've had a lot of ups and downs when you consider the last 9 months. What's something that you, from your perspective and your responsibilities, that you had to stop doing that was, you know, maybe a tough decision that's worth sharing with the rest of the movement, and how you made that decision?
I think it's probably tough more for us as Y professionals than it is our external audience and our partners. But, you know, I think everyone's kind of alluded to this. We transformed our entire membership model. You know, I'll preface by saying COVID taught us a whole lot. You know, our members and community members and volunteers or past members wanted to be and feel that they were part of something bigger and better than just, you know, Steve always says a treadmill or an elliptical. And I think Houston is the community that, again, has responded through Harvey and other things. So through that transformation of our membership model, and this was, you know, a 3-month process for us. The first thing that we had to get our heads around is the philosophy. You know, I refer to it as the Bed Bath and Beyond approach. And that's not being critical of anyone on the screen or anyone in the past, but the days of discounting and the days of waiving join year fees and deal a day and coupon, those are gone for us. And again, it all goes back to how we want to show up as a brand. You know, we're an $8.2 billion brand. We're one of the most recognized. People get confused. So how we're showing up different from with our community, the philosophy has changed significantly. And just to give you like an example, is we had our Cyber Monday or yesterday, and we exceeded last year's goal by tenfold, right? By no deal, by no offer, but it was just connecting people to our cause and utilizing the pricing as a response to COVID. So early indications, particularly in our community, that it's working. And I talked a little bit about our brand. We centralized our model, you know, so again, taking all the responsibility from sales and acquisition and all of that off of our individual centers. We live in an online world. Very few of us go to the airport and buy a ticket or go to a hotel and book a room. Everything that we do is online in a personalized way on our phone. And so that investment in our website that I talked about, that's how we feel we want to engage. And what our members said is when they walk in the door, they just want to be loved. They want to be appreciated. They want to learn their names, and they want a clean and safe environment, emphasis on safety. And then we talked about personalized pricing. Each one of us transact in a different way with the different brands, right? So you think about Amazon and Amazon Prime, how we engage with them, and then we serve up them information in a personalized way is the things that we're launching right now. So giving members the flexibility, not having to just be a facility member to receive all the wonderful benefits that we do, right? So giving them the flexibility that, hey, one day I may be paying this price, but the next day I may be paying this price. And we've learned that because we're not back and running all of our programs and services. And again, it tells us how we interact with brands on a daily basis. And then I'll leave, and we're going to talk a little bit about this, is about how to engage that population in an altruistic way to our cause. We do so much work. So why can't a member support the YMCA, right, around racial and social injustice? Why can't they support the Y around food bank, food services, essential childcare workers? So again, the ability to tap into that 8 million people and that transformational membership versus that transactional membership, that's woven into everything that we do. So big lift for us, probably more internally. And as Steve knows, we've had to do a lot of negotiating internally with our key stakeholders. Externally, it makes sense to everybody. But we've got a really nice plan of how we're going to roll all this out, and I'm pretty excited about where this can lead us.
Oh, yep. God, every time I think I'm on mute, I'm not. So I had a question from one of our audience members sent to me, John, as a follow-up. How are you thinking about your marketing budget? And I realized, Houston, it's been tough, right? We have had a lot of members on hold. We've had a fair, material number cancel. So I understand there's been a bit of a reset there. But would you describe your approach from your marketing budget as, going up, staying the same, being cut back, being dramatically cut back? How would you share with the movement what Houston is thinking about on marketing? And also, are you moving those dollars from something to something? And I really did get the question, so don't be laughing at me.
Steve and I are looking at each other telepathically here, so maybe both of us will answer. But I think it goes back to what we set up as a senior leadership team is redefining our priorities. And I shared with them membership, philanthropy, childcare services. And the way, right, we call them verticals. We reorganized our organization around specific verticals, right? So we're kind of a flat organization. But the traditional way or the traditional programs and services that we would typically fund, those priorities allowed us to reallocate dollars specifically towards those priorities. So it's a very, very smart approach versus what we would call a traditional spray and pray, right? And then the way that I talked about this digital online strategy is that let's not go out and talk about, sign up for swim lessons and sign up for basketball and sign up for this. It's about addressing isolation. So our messaging is very specific. And then, oh, by the way, here's all the things that we do to end isolation, to address health disparities. So again, very narrowed approach. The investment, I can say, has increased because, again, in order to reach that 8.2 million population, as well as to build a website and the infrastructure to support it, yes. But again, the priorities allowed us to find the give and take in some of maybe of our operational side. So again, if we move to a centralized model where 80% plus of all of our transactions currently happen online, we may not need as many people, right, running sales reports and numbers and doing tours in the center. So again, as we move more to online, we can alleviate those and just provide a great quality experience in the center as they walk in. So Steve?
Hey, Ron, I'll just add, I love that losing 50 or 60% of our membership base now is called a material deletion of members. So I'll just hold on to that for now on when I'm explaining what has happened to us. In terms of the investment, I look at this, I say, if we spend 100,000 dollars, and it turns into $25,000 a month of new revenue. I'll spend $1 million doing that. But we're going out with smaller chunks like that, that are about testing an approach, a model using the digital platform, that is easier to, the nice thing about that is it's much easier to measure whether people clicked through and actually took some action.
Yep.
So I think that's where I see us experimenting with some spends, and then where it's winning, we'll invest more dollars into it. But we're committed to it. It's not like just, hey, we're going to throw all this money at that and hope that it works. We're gonna be very smart about it. And I think the old world that I grew up in was, do the deals, do the waive the joiner fees, advertise on TV, maybe do some billboards, put a bunch of flyers around, and being able to focus our efforts on this digital approach is going to allow us to really measure the return on investment in a way. And we're seeing that already. We can measure the return on our investment much more quickly and make smarter investments in the future.
Yeah, I think part of the arc of my career in all of this stuff is when I started out, first 10 years in business, many of my customers would say, I know half of my advertising works, I just don't know which half, because it was newspaper ads, radio, TV, mailers, postcards, and it was throw it against the wall, hope something stick. And what's fascinating over the 30 years that I've been doing this is we've moved into an environment that most people it's very underappreciated, that we have incredible optics into what is working, what is creating a reaction, what messages are working, doing A/B testing. The digital world and the ability to track and understand and trace things. Generally, when you walk people through how scientific we can get with every, say, email message, it blows people away. Just most people don't understand that we can go from, I don't know if we get to 100%, but we can do a lot better than, half our advertising is working and we just don't know which half. So that's exciting that you guys are trailblazing that. I'm going to go maybe 5 more minutes, and then we'll take a break before our lunch break. And let me quick question back to Jerry. We all have suffered significant membership, what I would call core membership declines. Is there 1 or 2 strategies that when COVID begins to become behind us that you're going to implement something unique or creative to go after those orphan people, right? People who've canceled their memberships. Anything top of mind that you plan to do that might be worth sharing with the movement?
Yeah, Ron, and I think a lot of what has Steve and John and others have said is that I think this has been an opportunity for us, as in many wise, to be seen differently in the community. And again, we never, I'm sure like many, I bristle when somebody leaves, talks about having been to the Y's, I just went to the gym, right? And I hold that to myself because I don't want to offend a member. But again, we always see ourselves as more than gym and swim, and certainly those of us that have been doing this for a long time. Again, it's a part of our fabric, I think. And so, I think that nothing that others that anybody's doing differently in terms of remember strategies and those kinds of things. But I think, again, as we're seen differently as feeding kids, as providing childcare, that's an opportunity, again, to be seen from, as Steve mentioned, and their success with philanthropy. I think we've all had a lot of success. Some of it is, to be honest, has been COVID related and will not be probably returning at the next year at as great an amount. But certainly we've had a lot of donors and a lot of people that have become interested in the missional work that we do that have never been before. And so while we may have gotten $100,000 gift from the community foundation that we had not gotten before, we hope that to continue the work we're doing, we'll continue them as a donor, as well as a lot of others. And so I just think that missional work that we're doing, that's seen so prominently as a community, I think is, and we've not measured it specifically, but how we're seen in the community among the key stakeholders. Again, as you hear about all of the significant nonprofits in Memphis, maybe even 5 years ago, we were not mentioned there. And again, this isn't for the accolades. It's just the recognition of the work that we're doing and really, meeting community needs. And so I think, again, as John said, facilities that are clean and welcoming, and all of the things that we've always done. But the missional part that we're leading more with that, how that converts to members, I think we're finding, as we found in our virtual learning, the stats we have of the kids, we have about 5,000 kids in virtual learning, like a great many Ys are doing virtual learning. 62% of those kids have never been a part of the Y in any other capacity. And so that's 3,000 people that we've never served in our Memphis and Mid-South community. And so, again, just touching people there, hopefully that will convert into other things and membership and sports and swim lessons, but childcare certainly. But all of it's coming together, I think, for us to be seen in a different light.
Thanks, Jerry. Interesting. Jim, how about in Pittsburgh? What's something you're going to do differently or better to bring back those orphan customers when COVID subsides?
Yeah, I think it really gets back to the work that our membership team and the work they're doing to stage that up so that we have good information now about what were the uncomfortable reasons why they left. And then the timing for that of a campaign, a marketing approach to reach out to them and say, okay, we are here now. We're still here for you. Our donors continue to stay strong, which is wonderful. But then how do we get them to re-engage, as well as to be very well aware of the new why? I think we're all transforming right here. We're all becoming something different. We need to make sure that we're communicating that strongly. And that same thing that brought members in before will, I'm sure, in the new way, in the new form that we'll be in, they'll come rolling back in. The question is timing, and that's a very personal thing. The folks that joined me at 6 o'clock this morning, they're going to continue going strong. They're wearing their masks, and you hear them say very clearly, "I'm here. I'm wearing my mask. I'm getting the workout in because I want our doors to stay open."
Yeah.
The other folks who are joining us virtually, who are saying, "I totally believe in the mission of the Y. I totally dig what you're doing. I love the mission moments you start with every class with, but I can't come in your doors yet. And I'll let you know when I can."
Mm-hmm.
And then for the folks we lost, then we'll pull them back in.
Give me an example of what was the mission moment you started with today?
Maybe it's a little too direct, but ladies and gentlemen, November's in the past. Let's move forward. Let's look forward, and let's see, the vaccine is moving fast and strong, and our future is bright. Let's be safe. Let's be very self-aware. Let's be concerned about each other. Let's be humble in service, and let's move on.
Oh, awesome. Awesome. Well, we are getting up against the time. I'm getting messages from our MCs because I would keep this conversation going the full 2 days if I was in charge. This has been terrific. I want to say thank you, Jim and Jerry, Steve, John, Jorge. Thank you very much for sharing your wisdom. And Allison, if you want to jump in, let's remind everybody that we've got a break and how that's going to work. And then we have our breakout sessions, real exciting, option A, option B. So if we can remind our audience where we're headed, would appreciate it. But thanks a million, panel. Great discussion.